Hey guys, Fire here, and thanks for joining me for my, this comprehensive review of the Victrix by PDP Pro BFG wireless Xbox controller that has Dolby Atmos. But let's start by diving into talking about this controller, and then as I show off some of the things it can do, I'll share my kind of thoughts and opinions, tell you how I think it compares to other higher-end controllers that are available for Xbox. I will say this works for Xbox. There's also a PlayStation one as well. Basically, they can't work between the two systems, but they both will work on PC, so you kind of have those options there. But let's dive in and take a look at the controller here. So this controller, there's a couple, everything kind of has their gimmick and sticks. So along the way, I'm going to be comparing this controller to the Xbox Elite controller, but additionally, there's another controller that's in the high-end market on Xbox, the Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra. Now, this controller is available on Turtle Beach's website, both of these, as well as this is available in the Xbox store. This is the Halo one. It's been my daily driver for quite some time, so it's well-loved, but this means I'll be able to compare all these controllers amongst each other, so you can kind of get my overall thoughts and opinions on how we go. So let's talk about what this controller has to offer. First and foremost, it's fully wireless. It uses a D-pad, and you're going to see some parts falling off because I already pre-unscrewed some things to be able to show you. But it features fully wireless capability. It comes with a dongle. It also comes with this really cool carrying case that we'll kind of get into, as well as a braided purple, really cool looking USB-C cable to charge your controller, or you can also connect it wirely to the console if you really want to. It also features low latency. It has built-in Dolby Atmos audio, which is kind of an interesting thing to add to a controller. We'll kind of, I didn't really use it too much, so I'm not going to dive too much in there. But the big thing about this controller is it is customizable. So how does that work? Well, the controller comes with a carrying case here. That within the carrying case, you're going to have a bunch of different modules and things that you can kind of build out and customize your controller exactly how you want. Comes with a nice little screwdriver, and everything fits in this box and carrying case quite well. It's going to be a very similar carrying case to what we see the Stealth Ultra came with, but the Stealth Ultra doesn't have any customizable things. The things, though, that the Victrix is missing that the Stealth Ultra has when it comes to what I like is it actually has a charging dock. So we don't get one of these with the Victrix, so that to me is kind of a miss, and the carrying case doesn't really double as a charging base because it's kind of blocked here and you can't really plug in the cable underneath like you could on the other one, which seems kind of like a little bit of a missed opportunity, but you're going to get all kinds of cool bits and bobs here. So let's talk about how this works. Each one of these modules is held together with 4 screws. You can simply pull them out and completely customize them. So if you want to play fighting games, you can pull this one out here. I'm not a big fighting game person, so I didn't really use this one much, hence the cellophane still on it. But you basically just pop this module in, and now you have an arcade control stick to play whatever games you want. Or let's say you are somebody who plays on Xbox, right? Came over from PlayStation, and you really kind of prefer the orientation of how your sticks work. You can orientate these however you want, at least on the left side. The right one's kind of going to be a little more fixed, but there's a lot more customizations you can do within here. So let's talk about a little bit with the D-pad here. If you notice, this is a circle D-pad, but inside the package here, we have a square D-pad, which is kind of interesting to use, as well as a traditional D-pad, and these literally just pop out of here, and you can fit whichever D-pads you want within here, which is kind of nice. As well as the same thing happens with the analog stick knobs. You're presented with a kind of taller one. They say it's for like sniping in video games. I've tried them a million times. They don't work too much for me. And there's also a really short, like kind of concave one. So the ones that come with it kind of divot in. The big downside for me is you don't get 2 of each of these. So you're kind of limited to just 1 of each. However, you can customize it, which kind of sucks. And additionally, if you swap out some of these parts here, so like I took off the square D-pad because I wanted more of a rounded one, just because that's kind of how I like to play games. This sadly doesn't fit back in here in any good way, so I kind of just have it stacked on top of each other. But it's not anything that's too end of the world because I don't have the controller in here. It can kind of just chill here, as well as kind of like some top storage here where you can kind of store your thing. But as we can replace our modules and change our components, one of the biggest selling points for this controller is stick drift kind of happens over time, right? So they have another component to this controller that is an add-on. It's $40, and you know, mine are going to be a different color because they sent me the wrong things to begin with. So I'm going to end up buying black ones to match mine. But you can get these Hall effect switches, which will pretty much eliminate stick drift all entirely, and you can buy them in either black or white, so you can kind of, if you really want a black and yellow purple controller, you can do whatever you want, and you can kind of swap these in, and they just screw in right into place, and then you can basically eliminate stick drift. So if you're very like heavily independent in that, this is an add-on you can acquire pretty much at any time. I think when I last looked, they're still available on their website, and I'm sure they'll get restocked plenty, because Turtle Beach does have a pretty good track record of, you know, keeping parts and things in stock and being available for people. And then when it comes to just putting everything back together, it's just as simple as screwing back your modules and kind of getting going. Now, another big part for this controller, minus all the fun little customizations that I'm going to just lightly screw this back into place, is you get all kinds of the custom mappable buttons. So very similar where you have on the Elite controller, you know, you can have like the extra paddle buttons on the back, or same thing with the Stealth Ultra here, where you have your paddle buttons. You also get those same things in the Victrix, as well as the ability to kind of limit how far in and lock your analog sticks, which is definitely kind of interesting. You don't get the customization level that you would get on, you know, as much as like the Elite controller, where you kind of have like those 3 different toggles for how far it goes. So I definitely think when it comes to comparing the analog sticks and how they can kind of react and work on the controller, I definitely still prefer the Elite controller. But I do like that you have the buttons back here. They're a lot better lined than what the Stealth Ultra had here. I like that they're kind of separated, versus the Stealth Ultra kind of just piled everything on top of each other. Kind of made it a little challenging to use, and definitely for me, I wasn't the biggest fan. The only big complaint that I have about the Victus is, you know, for every Xbox controller we've had forever, you kind of get orientated to your menu and select buttons being right here. It is a very big change when I'm using this controller to hit this button when it's not the buttons I want, and they're actually up the top. So it's a little bit of a stretch to get to those. So I would like to have seen these be lowered down to be more natural, but I understand the need because of the removable components, that you can kind of get some limitation there. Now, as well as what you're probably used to with the Xbox controller with things like the accessibility app where you can remap buttons, the Victus also comes with its own Victus Control Hub app that you can download. You'll get a kind of a QR code that'll come in your package here, that you'll scan this, and it'll help you get into that hub and kind of start customizing everything out. So you'll have one of these in each of your boxes. So now that we've kind of talked about a lot of the things that the Victus can do and the other controllers, I wanted to talk about how I feel overall between, you know, when it comes to premium controllers. All 3 of these come in pretty well where they feel good. They all come with their own kind of independent cases for travel, so you get that premium aesthetic. So let's kind of rank how these go. When it comes to weight, for me, I want a controller that I'm spending a couple $100s to feel like it's got some weight to it. And if you remember when I did the Stealth Ultra review, this feels very flimsy and very light, and I wasn't a big fan of it. I'm used to like the weight of an Elite controller, and this time the Victus actually comes in. It feels good in your hands. It feels weighty, and it's actually something that I think is very comparable to the Elite controller. And by far none, I think it kind of shoves the Stealth Ultra almost out of being compared in any type of categories. So let's talk about other things with the controller. The grip, I really like the grip here. I wish it was a little more wrapped around, kind of how the Elite controller kind of gives you that whole grip versus you just have a little bit of grip here on the top. But that's not anything that's too big of a problem. I do really enjoy the ability to swap out these parts and have some customization to them far more than you really have with the Elite controller. Like you can swap your D-pads out and your analog stick caps and tighten them up and down, but you don't get as much customizations of being able to introduce things like new modules and rotate things around. I would like to have seen maybe the options to rotate this one here. Like you can't, you're kind of forced with this one to always have the XYAB up to top, but it would have been kind of cool if this module could have rotated, and maybe it's something they add in the future. So if I wanted my analog sticks up to top, I could. You know, some people, just depending on your hand sizes, might prefer that. But overall, I think, surprisingly enough, I'm going to say the Victrix, when it comes to at least customization sides on the front of the controller, by far is going to win this over the Elite controller. The biggest detractor, though, is I don't like where they put the menu and start buttons kind of up here on the controller. I think it's pretty bad placement, and I'd love to see those get brought down at some point. Just because it feels like a reach. It's like you have to, versus, you know, on your Elite controller, it's just kind of a natural slide. Here, it's going to be, you have to kind of like give up what you're doing to get to those buttons. And there are games where these buttons can come into play when you're using the controller, so that is kind of a thing to think about. So let's talk about the back of these controllers now. So we're going to flip them both over, and we'll bring the Stealth Ultra back in here just for the secondary here. I don't have the paddles out on my Elite controller because it's just depending on the games I play if I use them. But let's talk about each kind of element as we go here. When it comes to the paddles for the controllers, I do love the accessibility of being able to remove them when you just don't want them on the Elite controller. But let's look at everything from a sense as if they were there all the time, because you can't remove them off of these. When it comes to the paddles between the Stealth Ultra here and the Victrix, hands down, the placement of paddles here on the Victrix just works way better than the Stealth Ultras that are just kind of like next to each other. I like being able to know where I move my thumbs up and down, versus like I could accidentally double click both of these buttons, versus you're not going to double click both of these on their own. Now, I still think the Elite controller is going to come away with the win here when it comes to terms with being able to just remove them. You can still button map these in both of the apps, so there's still all that customization between the three controllers, but I think the Elite's going to win here when it comes to that. And now when it comes down to the triggers, there's not much to talk about here because you don't get a whole heck of a lot of customization in the Stealth Ultra. You kind of get two kind of tones. The Elite gives you three tones, but then the kind of Victrix only really gives you like one option to kind of lock your triggers at, versus you get more versatility in the Elite controller. So I think the Elite controller here is going to kind of come away with a win there. And that's going to kind of cover the back of the controller. So let's talk about really which ones I think are the kind of the more bang for your buck. So you can pick up an Elite controller for price starting around $140, but you're not going to get all the stuff that you need. So you're looking more closer to $180. So I'm going to say it's $180, which comes in basically at the same price point that you could get with the Victrix here. The Stealth Ultra, it's $200, and honestly doesn't have as much of the bells and whistles that really these two come with. So I think the Stealth Ultra is just going to ultimately lose the battle here. And then I think what it's going to kind of come down to is, really, do you want to stick with first party, or do you want to go with another option? I think both controllers are great. I like the weight a little more on the Elite controller, but I do like the customization capabilities of the BFG here. So it's really going to come down to your preference of, you know, if you're a super heavy shooting game player and you really want to go into crazy detail, you're probably going to lean a little more toward the right side here. But if you're more just casual but just wanting a nicer weighted controller, probably more Elite. But I think either one of these controllers are going to be a solid starting point with whichever route you go. I love that this one has a recharge dock. I think the fact that this doesn't have a recharge dock is honestly a bit of a miss. You know, really, that's kind of about the only things that I really don't like about this controller is the lack of a dock to charge it on, and just the placement of these buttons. I wish that was just a little better laid out. But again, still feels like a really still solid controller, and I think it's a good little pick if you're looking for something premium and you want something that's not first party. It's still an official Xbox controller, and if it's anything like most of the Turtle Beach products they have along the way, and any time they're going to have every one of these parts available to order at any time, just like they do with their headsets and everything in between. So ultimately, I think the Victrix is a solid pickup and worth checking out in the premium controller kind of market of things. As always, please let me know what you guys think of my review down below in the comments. If you have any more questions or want to know more about the controller, just let me know. I appreciate you hanging around with me today, and I hope to catch you next time.